أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعنده علم الغيب فهو يرى ألم ينبأ بما في صحف موسى وإبراهيم الذي وفى ألا تذر وازرة ووزر أخرى وأن ليس للإنسان إلا ما سعى و- وأن سعيه سوف يرى ثم يجزاه الجزاء الأوفى وأن إلى ربك المنتهى صدق الله العظيم. What has he knowledge of the unseen so that he can see? Nay, is he not acquainted with what is in the books of Moses and of Abraham who fulfilled his commandments? Namely, that no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, that man can have nothing but what he strives for, that the fruit of his striving will soon come into sight. Then will he be rewarded with a reward complete, that to thy Lord is the final goal. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. I do apologize for not creating a video in some time, but I wanted to talk about what's been going on in the news in France. If you're not aware, there was a 17-year-old teenager of North African descent who was driving a stolen vehicle with Polish license plates. He was stopped by the police. He tried to get away. He hit the police officer, and then he was shot dead on site. And this has sparked a very large-scale riot in France by people of North African descent, some of whom are Muslim, some who are not. And this has caused widespread, looting and destruction. From the videos that we've seen, a library was set on fire, which I've confirmed contains Qurans in that library. The city hall in one of the areas in France was burned. Um, uh, Cars have been completely destroyed. Buildings have been torn down. 45,000 police have been dispatched. Over 200 police injured. Just complete wide destruction, looting. We saw a woman in Muslim garb stealing television. There was a Chinese tourist bus that was attacked. So this is going to have severe ripple effects for Muslims, not just in France, but in Europe and the whole Western world. But let's bring it back quite a bit and give some historical context, because this I will agree with some of the Islamic spokespeople that I might not agree with in how they're handling this situation. But these events, they're not occurring in a vacuum. So the colonization of Algeria by the French Republic in the 1900s or the 19th century. That went on for some time, and the people on the right will say, well, this occurred because there was a constant enslavement of European peoples by the Barbary pirates, and that was going on for some time. And once the French invaded Algeria, then that stopped. Now, I'm not using that as an argument. I'm just giving historical context. I consider myself an anti-colonialist. I don't think that Europeans should have left Europe because it's been used as a pretext to, create more mutual animosity between Muslims and Westerners. Um, but in my opinion, I think one of the biggest problems that we're facing is that we're not differentiating between what governments, elites who are running Western countries are doing, and the attitudes and the feelings of the populace of those countries. Such is the case of France. Now, in 1954, after decades of colonialism, the French population started to get the information via newspaper the newspaper Le Monde that there were atrocities that were occurring to the Algerian population by the Pieds Noirs, the French population in Algeria. That that there was killing on a mass scale, that there was an independence movement in Algeria that had trickled over to France itself, and very quickly, the attitude of the French population is that Algeria should have independence. That we shouldn't act as like like they were controlling the population anymore. And this was one of the main talking points of Charles de Gaulle. And also, I just recently learned that John F. Kennedy, in one of his first speeches, talked about Algerian independence. So the French population, at the end, once they realized that that there were atrocities happening in Algeria, were against further colonialism by the French government in Algeria. And the referendum, they voted overwhelmingly for what's called the Evian Accords, which led to Algeria's official independence. Right. So why are we then extrapolating, the what the French government has done to what's happening to the current population of France? And I think a major reason why Muslims feel that these attacks are, if not fully justified, but something just not to care about, vis-a-vis the death and destruction that was caused, is that there's this kind of attitude that all Westerners don't like Muslims, that they're like Islamophobes in hiding, and the people who have no problem with Muslims are few and far between. And when you have Islamic spokespeople that only focus on the worst of the worst, like the anti-Islam right, ex-Muslims, things that they see on social media, you don't understand the situation at the ground level, because there are many Westerners who have no problem with Muslims. Either they're neutral, towards Islam and Muslims, or they have a positive opinion of Islam and Muslims. These people, they definitely do exist. As recent polling has shown, and we want to do more survey research on the subject, but I think there's a real disconnect with, like what, who is responsible, who do we place the blame on? Because you have regular French people who had, probably had no previous hatred toward Muslims and Islam, who are now coming back to their homes or their businesses and seeing them completely burned to the ground. So these recent events are going to serve as a lightning rod or a recruiting poster for the far right. The people who previously had no problem with Muslims and Islam are now going to, end up joining, these far right groups, and they're going to get more support in droves, not just in France, but this is going to trickle over to the rest of Europe and the rest of the Muslim world, right? I mean, the whole world is watching now. We're in 2023, and everyone's got a video camera, and they're going to see, this kind of destruction that was caused. Now, I mean, again, I never, I am a total anti-colonialist. I don't think, European powers should be in the Muslim and African world. And I think that, this has precipitated, the migration crisis. When you look at, the two factions of the right, that we've been talking about in this channel, the anti-Islam right on the one hand, and these are the people who get all the media attention. This is the faction that is going to have any cut in any political party, that's going to be on the right. Their main focus is, this is caused by Islam, because Islam condones this type of behavior, which it clearly does not. And you have the dissident right, who are big in numbers, but they've all been, their leaders have been mostly deplatformed, who previously may have had, attitudes on Islam that range from neutral to even positive. And, with the stance that Muslims are taking, and, not coming out and saying, that this is wrong from an Islamic perspective, this is just going to unite these two factions, right? And without an understanding of these two factions at the ground level, it's just going to make things absolutely worse for Muslims. I can totally see Macron, and his government completely cracking down on Muslims in general, anti-Islam laws, anti-hijab laws, cracking down on the refugee crisis, having more draconian measures and more surveillance against Muslims. So on top of it being, this type of behavior being completely un-Islamic, it's just a poor chess move. I mean, you know, this whole idea, that we're at war against France, okay, yeah, if you're gonna, okay, so you're not gonna be at war against them, and your whole livelihood depends on getting government support for your family, from the French government. What happens, when that money runs dry? What happens when they put a freeze on your bank account? What are you going to do then? You're Muslims are just simply not thinking ahead in this regard. And you can call me a sellout, you can call me an Uncle Tom, if you will. But I mean, what good is it? Ask yourself, what good is it going to do to not, take a stand on this and say, hey, it's absolutely terrible what's happening to Muslims in Muslim countries and in the African world. Yes, France has a history of anti-Islamic laws, but among those who support Islam and Muslims, um, you know, they're going to look like complete sellouts themselves. So it's going to be even harder to justify saying that Islam has good things to offer, even if you're like a French traditionalist, like a Ghanaian, and you see the good and beauty in Islam. You're going to be seen as complete and total sellout and traitor to your people. So I don't understand why the French populace, regardless of what their attitudes on Islam are, why they're responsible for the colonialism of their forefathers, when even during the 1960s, French people who were living in France were against French involvement in Algeria to begin with. Once they realized that there were atrocities happening there. Also, the French people were against the invasions of Iraq and the government as well. They never wanted the alliance of the United States and the UK to go into Iraq. They said it would destabilize the whole region. Correctly, I remember in 2003, the United States was calling French fries freedom fries because the French were opposed to going in there, right? So, um, and really, this is my message, to my fellow, Euro Muslims. I mean, at this point, um, we really need to stick together because um, I can understand why Muslims are upset, why they don't have any sympathy for our people. Um, and at the end of the day, I'm sure they want them to become deep down, they want to become Muslim. But the fact of the matter remains is that this is a perfect example of why there is so much mutual animosity between our co-religionists and their co-ethnics. And even trying to place them in the same room together is going to end up in a verbal, if not physical, fight. Um, and even for us to bring this up, right now the Muslim community does not want to hear it. And we can talk until we're blue in the face about the fact that most converts to Islam have a lot to offer. We know hundreds of non-Muslims, and we have an opportunity to change the image of Islam in the West. Uh, and this is integral. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not that if we're thinking about converts, yeah, this is going to be to the detriment of the Muslim world. But a lot of Muslims, even Muslims, who run masajid or Islamic organizations, it's hard for them to feel any sympathy, towards our friends and family and community, and think that nothing but a small minority of them don't have any problem with Muslims and Islam. And then then we have to deal with our own families' attitudes as well. I mean, this doesn't look good for Islam and Muslims. Um, I mean, like I would not want to show the response from Islamic organizations on social media to my non-Muslim family, even if they had no problem with Islam or Muslims. Um, and on top of that, even some of the Euro converts themselves are, taking this approach that, yeah, burn France to the ground. You're getting what you deserve. Like I stated in the ayat that I quoted, no one can bear the sins of their forefathers. And if you want to take this approach, that they get what they deserve, every society in the Islamic world now, at some point, their ancestors hated Islam and Muslims. The Quraysh wanted to completely wipe Islam and Muslims off the map. During the early days of the Muslims, the Persians wanted to completely wipe off the Islamic empire off the map. The Afghans wanted to destroy the Muslims. If you read Thomas Walker Arnold's The Spread of Islam in the World, the Nigerians, sub-Saharan Africans, wanted to kill the Duat, who wanted to spread Islam. So, this is not an anomaly. It's not as if, your entire family and your entire nation woke up one day and you were all Muslim without any, opposition whatsoever. I mean, just look at, South Asia. I mean, look at, the Hindu sphere, how, like there's a lot of animosity towards Islam and Muslims there. Right. So, and, we have a lot of solidarity with our Indian Muslim brothers and sisters, and well, because they're in a similar position. Like it's easy to, if you're on, an e-Muslim on social media, to just make fun of Pajeets, call them Pajeets, which is a derogatory term towards Hindus, and use some of the same rhetoric or terms that the right wing uses towards Hindus. But the fact of the matter is, the people who suffer the most consequences from that are Indian Muslims living in the Hindu sphere. So you, from the comfort of your room, can post all sorts of stuff about Hindus, whether or not that's justified or not. You're not going to be the one that's going to be suffering the consequences. So yeah, so I mean, it's a terrible situation that's going on in France, and I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this doesn't escalate, but it's inevitable. I mean, at some point, French police are going to crack down. They're going to kill. I hope not, but I would billah. But if they kill or injure other protesters, then we're going to have a giant mess on our hands, because then it's really going to get bad. And I could totally see this spilling over into the rest of Europe as well. And yeah, it's just I don't I really think that Islamic leadership, they need to be a little bit smarter about this, and they need to think a little bit more strategically. Like I can sympathize with the frustration and anger, given what what the French powers did, not just in Algeria, but in other countries. But your average European, even back then, did not benefit that much from colonialism. In fact, it was a detriment. I mean, you're spending all this money in other countries, from tax dollars from the European populace, and it's not done nothing but foment anger towards between Islam and the West. And if you talk to a lot of average Europeans on the street, like it's yeah, we want, we don't want any more Western interventionism in Muslim lands, because what has it done for anybody? So yeah, I mean, again, it's frustrating, but as converts and Euro-Muslims, talk specifically with my my fellow Euro converts, we just have to stay strong, find allies where we can. I mean, there are many Muslims, non-European Muslims, who agree with us on this matter. They think that we need to be a little bit smarter about how we, who we blame, what we advocate for, and taking a stand against this, looting and burning things to the ground, and violence to people who may or may not have any problem with Muslims whatsoever. And again, you're going to find even like your big Islamic leaders who want dawah to be spread in the West, saying things against their own, making blanket statements against their own people. That's just going to make it more and more difficult for us to survive as Muslims. But what can you do? I mean, you can't try to change their opinion. all we can do is just try to ally with as many people as we can who agree with us on both sides of the aisle. For those who like are just dead set on escalating conflict between Islam and the West, you just got to keep them as separate as you can for the time being, and you can't let what they say on either side get to you, because this is the world and the atmosphere that we're living in, right? And above all, make dua, make duas to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala that like that we stay on the straight path, that our families and communities are guided to Islam, that the safety and security of Muslims living in the West. But I don't see how taking this kind of revenge motive is going to help improve the safety and security of Muslims living in Europe and abroad. Okay, so please like and subscribe to Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.